The cruisers hung against the silent backdrop of space like predatory birds in wait. Though cold and dark to the eyes of any casual observer, those warships bristled with advanced weaponry, radiating menace with every metallic plate. This was the Blockade, and it was perfect. No unauthorized vessel, no matter how nimble, was supposed to slip by. Every approach to the jump gate was monitored. Every corner of near space boasted sensor drones that linked to the cruiser's AI networks. Those who dared attempt a breach rarely survived more than a few seconds. For months, the Blockade had starved the outer colonies, yet Earth was not ready to abandon them. Commander Leah Gannon stood at the helm of the Aurora's bridge, studying the display of enemy positions. Her dark hair, cut short in a sharp bob, framed a face hardened by sleepless weeks. Countless lines of data flickered before her on the holoscreens. Her eyes darted from one readout to the next, absorbing the strength estimates of the Blockade, analyzing flight paths, factoring changes in patrol rotations. She ran her thumbnail across her lower lip, the only sign of her worry. Behind her, the Aurora's engine hum vibrated through the floor, a resonant thrum that felt like a heartbeat. The intangible tension on the bridge was almost stifling. Officers, each with responsibilities that had grown heavier as the Blockade went on, worked in silence. They knew what was at stake. The outlying colonies, Aria Prime, Genisar's Peak, and a dozen smaller settlements, were desperate for medical supplies, food shipments, and specialized equipment. Children were dying for lack of basic medicine. Settlers who had struggled to build a new life found themselves abandoned. The Blockade was a death sentence, unless humanity found a way to slip through. "Commander," said Lieutenant Galen, a young officer with keen eyes, "patrol ships on Sector 3 are converging on gate approach. We have a short window in Sector 7, maybe 10 minutes, before the next rotation." Leah nodded curtly. "We have to move during that window. The next chance might not come for days." She straightened her posture, pivoting to address the bridge. "All right. We know our strategy. The Blockade is tight, but they can't be everywhere at once, especially not when we're running decoys in Sectors 3 and 5. If our infiltration teams can scramble their local sensors, we'll have a narrow path. Once we're through, it's just a matter of making the jump. Everyone prepared for the sequence?" A murmur of confirmation echoed across the bridge. The Aurora had an experimental cloaking device that was extremely resource-intensive. Whilst engaged, it allowed the ship to slip under conventional scans, but only for minutes at a time. Long enough, if everything went perfectly, to skirt the heaviest part of the Blockade and reach the gate. Commander Gannon glanced at the illuminated readouts once more, then lifted her chin. "Lieutenant Galen, signal our infiltration teams. Tell them it's time." She sank back in her command seat. Her people had debated 100 variations of the plan, run countless simulations, calculated variables until the logic left them dizzy. Now it was showtime. The infiltration teams struck first. Carbon shuttles, each no bigger than a large cargo crate, drifted toward the Blockade. They were jam-packed with hackers, sensor disruptors, decoy drones. The Blockade's picket ships might or might not notice the small crafts, but the infiltration teams were prepared to be found. If discovered, each shuttle had only one mission: cause chaos, and chaos they produced in abundance. In the hush before the infiltration teams engaged, Commander Gannon's tactical map gave her the final confirmation she'd sought. The Blockade squadrons had pivoted to the infiltration points, a fraction of them diverting from the main approach corridor. That was the signal. With a single flick across her console, Gannon activated the Aurora's cloaking field. All outside sensors would see only emptiness. The Aurora throttled forward, forging on a path that wove through the Blockade's sensor net. It was no simple straight line, but a carefully plotted series of arcs, designed to arc away from the densest clusters of cruisers. Strayed detection was still possible. A single sensor glitch, or a random swarm of drones, and their cover would be gone. The ship glided forward, straining every system to remain silent. In the far distance, faint flashes lit up the blackness. The infiltration teams had begun their work. A swirl of bright decoy signals erupted on the Blockade's readouts. It was a digital minefield, illusions that suggested small fleets or perhaps clandestine supply runners. The Blockade's warships scrambled to respond, uncertain which signals were real, which were fabricated. Meanwhile, the infiltration shuttles hopped around like specters, each layering false data onto the Blockade's networks. At the helm, Lieutenant Galen murmured updates. "Commander, infiltration shuttles 1 and 2 have successfully deceived the warship in Sector 4. 3 is drawing fire. 4 and 5 are still in stealth approach." Commander Gannon's fists clenched, but her voice remained steady. "We press on." Each infiltration team had sworn to do whatever it took. If 1 or 2 had to sacrifice themselves to save entire colonies, they would. That knowledge tore at Gannon's heart, but the mission demanded it. From the outside, it would appear that the Aurora was simply not there. Yet the Blockade bristled with advanced technologies. Gannon watched as a pair of smaller enemy frigates pivoted suspiciously toward her ship's approximate location. Her breath caught. Did they have a hint of the Aurora's presence? Without prior warning, plasma turrets flared, releasing green-white arcs that seared through the void. Gannon's heart hammered as she realized they were scanning, taking potshots at phantom contacts. The energy blast soared wide, but the tension on the bridge soared with each volley. Invisible or not, one stray round could punch through their hull, crippling the mission in an instant. "Maintain course," Gannon ordered softly. The sensor reading told her they were just a few thousand kilometers from the jump gate's outer ring, a mere blink in interstellar terms, but a precarious distance. Protective turrets lined the ring, each capable of blasting an unshielded ship to pieces. They had to get even closer, slip inside the gate's inner perimeter, and initiate the jump sequence. And that was always the riskiest part. Turning on the jump ring would create an unmistakable energy spike. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The infiltration shuttles were nearing the end of their capacity to maintain illusions. Gannon's console displayed warnings that each infiltration team was on the brink. Exact details were scarce, but the abrupt silence in a couple of channels suggested the worst. She pressed her lips tightly, refusing to let the heartbreak of losing them overshadow the mission. Every second they endured was a gift. Every second they kept the Blockade's eyes off the Aurora was another step to success. "Commander, we're at the ring's outer perimeter," said Ensign Haruto, voice thick with anxiety. "We'll be in position to activate the jump in 90 seconds. Full stealth until we fire, then spool the ring. The moment it's active, we punch through." She exhaled. "Galen, patch me through to the infiltration teams." A moment later, the overhead speakers crackled with static. Faint voices came through, shouts overshadowed by some undercurrent of battle. "To all infiltration teams," Gannon began, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "We're at the ring. Prepare to exfil or continue final diversions. Repeat, last call. We honor your bravery. Stand by for final approach." She cut the channel. A wave of guilt and gratitude rippled through her. Those infiltration teams had fought so hard already. Some had doubtless died. But their sacrifices had brought the Aurora this far. They would not squander that chance. "Go!" Gannon whispered. The Aurora's engines quietly shifted as the jump ring's spool signal was sent. She could practically feel the ring's energy building. It went from a glimmer to a crackling cosmic swirl that ignited around the perimeter. Like a massive circle drawn in white-hot flame, the ring flared. Immediately, sensor alarms shrieked to life. Across the Blockade, caution lights erupted. Warships pivoted en masse. They saw the ring come alive, but they didn't yet see the Aurora. The cloak was still masking them. The Blockade's gunners, however, knew that only a ship was capable of activating the ring. From every angle, beams of lethal power lanced forward, saturating the ring's general region. Gannon felt her ship jostle violently as at least one beam clipped the starboard deflector. "Shields at 70%, Galen shouted. "We can't hold up to many direct hits while cloaked." "Prepare to drop cloak and jump," Gannon replied, her voice tight. "If we stay in stealth, we risk letting the ring spool out of sync." She stabbed a finger toward the jump sequence controls. "Decloak now!" At once, The Aurora flared into visible spectrum. Her deflectors snapped to full power, intercepting a barrage of plasma. On the Blockade screens, the Aurora would appear as a sudden, luminous point hugging the ring's activation circuit. Warships adjusted their aim swiftly. The ring portal shimmered, almost stable. Ganon's mouth went dry. Just a few seconds longer. The next volley hammered the Aurora's shields. Sparks danced across the console. The overhead lights flickered. A wave of heat shimmered along the hull. Still, the ring's swirling aperture opened. With one final lurch, Ganon slammed the thrust to maximum. The Aurora shot forward into the portal. There was a gut-wrenching lurch as space-time folded around the hull in a bright, kaleidoscopic wave. Then silence. The Blockade was behind them. They materialized in the star system of Aria Prime. Pinpricks of starlight glimmered across a pale swirl of cosmic dust. Ganon himself sagged with a mixture of relief and dread. The mission was only half finished. They needed to deliver the badly needed supplies to multiple colonies Aria Prime first, then the others. And the Blockade wouldn't just sit idle. It would regroup, guess possible arrival coordinates, and attempt to counter them. "Commander, we have cleared the jump," Galen reported with barely contained excitement. "Engines responding, shields at 30%, hull integrity stable, cloak is offline for the moment. The power drain is too high." "Understood," Galen replied. "Let's get the supplies ready. We'll dispatch the cargo modules to the planet's surface first. Then we proceed to the next colony. We're on borrowed time. Rally the ground teams. Notify the colony's leaders. No rest." That had become her motto. Even after a brush with death, there was no such luxury as relaxation. She had to be the pillar for her crew. None of them could afford collapse, not with the outer world counting on them. The Aurora soared toward Aria Prime, letting gravity well mechanics guide it gracefully into orbit. A scramble of transmissions reached them from the planet below. Static-laced relief poured in. Aria Prime's governor, Franco Alaria, expressed shock and gratitude that a human ship had appeared at all. Many in the colony had believed Earth had given up. But Ganon was not about to lecture on the difficulties. She curtly acknowledged the thanks, instructed the Aurora's logistical teams to coordinate medical triage, and arranged a supply drop as soon as they were within safe range. The cargo modules were specialized capsules, each containing an array of essential items: food rations, advanced healing kits, water purifiers, seeds for sustainable agriculture. The transmissions from Aria Prime described entire families on the brink of starvation, hospitals that had run out of antitoxins. The knowledge weighed heavily on every crew member. They hurried to begin the deployment of pods. The moment the first supply module burned through the planet's atmosphere and touched down on a designated plateau near the main settlement, messages of joy flooded the comms. Ganon felt a faint smile tug at her lips. In that moment, she forgot the Blockade, the infiltration teams, even the danger that lurked behind them all. Humanity had come through, even if for just one planet. They had delivered hope, yet there was more to be done. "Status on the Blockade's movement?" she asked, shifting her focus to the broader mission. Lieutenant Galen consulted the ship's scanning array, which was limited in range, but enough to detect if jump signatures were forming in pursuit. "Multiple spikes near the Blockade station, but unclear if they've locked on our trajectory. We can't be sure they won't attempt a chase. We should keep moving." Ganon nodded. "We'll remain in orbit just long enough to confirm distribution of supplies, then we jump to Genisar's Peak. Keep scanning for hostiles. Helm, prepare for an immediate shift if we detect incoming craft." She moved to the comm station. "Aurora, to ground teams. We're sending down everything we can. Coordinate with local authorities for immediate distribution. Time is short. We'll be departing." Her words broke off when the proximity alarm blared. On the overhead display, a rift opened near the system's outer margin. A warship emerged in a swirl of shimmering distortion. Ganon's gut twisted. Some element of the Blockade had tracked them here, or had guessed the route. The warship was smaller than the cruisers that had formed the Blockade line, likely a fast frigate, specialized in pursuit. That spelled trouble. It might not be able to handle them alone, but it could call for reinforcements. All hands, battle stations, Gannon snapped. We need to finish our drop, then move. If they get enough ships here to hold us, Aria Prime will become a war zone. Below them, the planet's horizon shimmered a gentle gold. Yet in the darkness above, the Aurora readied for conflict. A swirl of ion beams soon streaked across the emptiness, courtesy of the pursuing frigate. The Aurora's battered shields flared under the onslaught, but they held. For the moment, the ship's weapon arrays had a better range, so they laid down covering fire. The shimmering arcs of plasma forced the frigate to juke aside. Although the Aurora carried enough firepower to fight, they couldn't linger. With each passing second, the frigate's support ships might arrive, or at least jam the Aurora's jump. Gannon couldn't risk the precious cargo still in the hold, nor the lives of everyone aboard. On the planet's surface, local comms confirmed the final cargo module had safely landed. Crews were beginning distribution. That was enough. They had to leave. Lieutenant, spool up the short-range jump. We'll leap to a position near Genisar's Peak. Engage in 70 seconds. Gannon forced her mind to the next step. Genisar's Peak was an even more remote colony, perched on the edge of a mineral-rich planetoid. They needed a different approach to avoid leading this frigate straight to the colony. Helm, set an indirect course. Plot a micro-jump or two to hide our final destination. The Aurora's thrusters roared, rolling the ship to keep the ventral shields pointed toward the frigate's last volley. The frigate's arrival had been swift, but the Aurora's advanced drive system could outrun them if, given the slightest advantage. At Gannon's command, the jump spool powered up. A swirl of violet energy spun along the Aurora's ring. Then, with a snap, the ship vanished from the gravity well of Aria Prime. In the blackness of uncharted space, they reappeared. A brilliant star glowed in the distance, but no habitable planet was near. The jump was short, just enough to lose pursuit. Gannon's shoulders relaxed slightly. They had evaded the immediate threat, though not for long. In such wide emptiness, the Blockade's forces could rely on sensor sweeps or guesswork to track them. Plot the next jump, Gannon ordered. We'll proceed to Genisar's Peak. We'll do it quickly. Every second we wait is a chance for them to triangulate us. A wave of fatigue washed over her. How many more leaps, how many more close calls before the Blockade responded with overwhelming force? And how many infiltration teams had they lost back at the ring? She closed her eyes, steeling herself. They had to keep pushing. She would not abandon the next colony in line. In less than 15 minutes, the Aurora glided into orbit around Genisar's Peak. This was not a lush world, but a rugged planetoid. Its surface bristled with craggy mountains, dotted with man-made domes to shield settlers from harsh storms. Although the population was small, they had a significant mining infrastructure, providing valuable metals for humanity's broader network. The Blockade's stranglehold meant no shipments could arrive or depart, cutting off both supply lines and the colony's resource exports. Where Aria Prime's people had greeted them with relief, Genisar's Peak responded with an almost disbelieving silence at first. Then a rush of excitement and hope crackled across the comms. They were in dire need of specialized equipment. The storms had damaged their power grid. Hundreds of families huddled in the dark. The starport's hangars were in disrepair, and medical supplies were close to zero. The Aurora wasted no time. Shuttles, loaded with mechanical parts and additional rations, descended into the storm-lashed environment. Pilots navigated swirling dust devils that battered the shuttle's hulls. Commander Gannon watched from the bridge's main screen. Tension knotted in her chest. If the Blockade's pursuers appeared now, her orbiting ship would be forced into a running battle while the colony's fragile environment risked catastrophic collateral damage. She urged speed at every step. The ground teams worked swiftly, distributing the gear needed to repair the planet-based power grid. Reports showed flickers of restored power in the central dome within the hour. The sense of accomplishment was short-lived. A deep alarm tone rang out from the sensor console. Ensign Haruto turned, face paling. "Commander, we have multiple jump signatures forming. Looks like they're inbound from the previous system. possibly the same frigate plus reinforcements. "How many?" Gannon asked tersely. "At least 3 warships, possibly 4. They'll drop in any moment." Her first instinct was to race out of the system, but she knew the colonists might be left vulnerable at the worst time. The moment the blockade saw that Genesar's Peak was receiving aid, they might bombard the colony to discourage further attempts. Gannon's mind raced. Could the Aurora fend them off? The blockade's small flotilla was heavily armed, but the Aurora was no easy target. Perhaps they could buy time. Each second gave Genesar's Peak an edge in restoring their defenses. "Recall the last shuttle," Gannon demanded. "Get 'em docked as soon as possible. Then raise our deflector to maximum. Weapons to stand by." She inhaled. "We'll hold position as long as we can. If outgunned, we retreat, but not before making sure the colony's essential systems are stable." The hush before combat was broken by the harsh light of multiple warp tiers. 3 ships appeared in quick succession, a pair of frigates and a heavy corvette. They wasted no time scanning the Aurora's position. Then the corvette unleashed a series of high-intensity torpedoes. Glowing streaks crossed the void. Aurora's gunners locked onto the incoming torpedoes, snapping off intercept shots. Explosions rippled across the darkness. One torpedo managed to slip through the intercept net, slamming into the Aurora's forward shield. Consoles flickered, but the shield held. Commander Gannon's face was set in grim determination. "Concentrate fire on the corvette's weapon array. If we can cripple their big guns, the frigates alone won't stand a chance in a direct slugfest. But watch their formation. They might attempt flanking maneuvers." The Aurora's turret spat a volley of molten beams that sliced across the corvette's hull. One frigate circled to the left, bombarding the Aurora's flank. The shield distribution tried to keep up. Gannon reeled as the deck jerked under her boots. A wave of sparks sprayed from the overhead panel. The smell of ozone flooded the bridge. The blockade had come prepared. "We have a hull breach on Deck 3!" Gallon shouted over the alarms. "Emergency bulkheads are in place, but we've got casualties. Transfer additional power to forward and port shields," Gannon commanded. "Keep targeting the corvette's turret banks. We only need to outlast them long enough to ensure Genesar's Peak is out of danger." In the planet's orbit, the chaotic dance of starships lit the sky like a swirling, vicious storm. Each second tested the Aurora's resilience. Meanwhile, the blockade's forces hammered relentlessly, determined to either capture or destroy the intruder. Another cluster of missiles sparked outward from the corvette. The Aurora answered with a blistering barrage that turned the vacuum between them into a gauntlet of rapid-fire blasts. Yet the Aurora had the advantage of a so-called AI foresight subroutine. The blockade's standard codes were known to Earth's infiltration teams, at least in part. Each blockade missile carried a signature that could be partially predicted. The Aurora's defense turrets moved with uncanny precision, intercepting 2 missiles in rapid succession. The third impacted, but with minimal damage, thanks to last-second shield reinforcement. Encouraged by these modest successes, Gannon leaned forward. "We can break them," she muttered. The warships were focusing on offense, but their defenses, especially the corvettes, were lacking. The Aurora's guns hammered repeatedly along the corvette's hull. A large chunk of plating sheared off, venting atmosphere and revealing internal compartments. The corvette's turret bank flickered, then went dark. A volley from the blockade frigates reminded Gannon that they were still outnumbered. The deck tilted precariously as more blasts hammered home. The Aurora's shield integrity was dropping dangerously. They were flirting with total collapse. "Lieutenant, status on Genesar's Peak," she called in the cacophony of alarms. Haruto's voice carried a shred of triumph. "The colony's dome is stable, powers restored, and they have functional radar systems. They're telling us to leave, thanking us for the supplies and repairs. They know we can't stay." That was all Gannon needed. "Helm, set jump coordinates for the next colony. We've done what we can here. Prepare for immediate departure." Even as the Aurora's jump drive powered up, a frigate closed in on their flank, unleashing a punishing barrage that slammed into the Aurora's starboard side. A shot penetrated the shield, scorching the hull. The jolt nearly threw Gannon from her seat. Smoke curled from a console station. but the jump systems engaged with a resonant hum that promised escape. "Now!" she shouted. The Aurora vanished just as another torpedo volley streaked into their wake, harmlessly detonating in empty space. The battered ship emerged in the relative calm of a parsec away. Gannon coughed as acrid smoke filled her lungs. The engineering crew scrambled to contain the damage. Exhaustion dampened the adrenaline surging through her. They had survived. 2 colonies were now safely resupplied. Yet more existed, scattered throughout the region, all in need of help. The Blockade, battered as certain ships might be, remained formidable. If each mission required a pitched battle like this, the Aurora could not sustain many more. Her hull was peppered with scorch marks, and some sections were depressurized. Systems across the board were in dire need of service. Still, retreat was unthinkable. She remembered the infiltration teams that had given their lives just so the Aurora could pass. No, returning to Earth with anything less than success would dishonor them and doom countless settlers. "Damage report," Gannon demanded, forcing her shoulders back. Lieutenant Galen surveyed the data. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5, limited. We lost a few good people in the starboard corridor. Shields are heavily compromised. We can still jump, but the cloak drive is offline. The infiltration subroutine is severely damaged. We can't rely on illusions or stealth for the next runs." That was a grim blow. The Blockade was on high alert. Without a functioning cloak, the Aurora was a more obvious target. Gannon dipped her head for a beat, then exhaled, voice calm. "We'll manage. Let's see if we can effect any repairs on the cloak, and see if we can contact the infiltration teams that might have survived. We need their help." Gannon's next hours were consumed by frantic attempts to patch the Aurora's systems. Her engineering crew bypassed burned-out circuits, reconnected half-melted conduits, and used improvised solutions to bring some measure of stealth function back. The infiltration team channels remained ominously silent, save for faint static. Eventually, a weak signal arrived. 2 infiltration shuttles had survived the initial scramble. They were drifting, power nearly expended, in a region not far from the Blockade, hiding. They had little chance of escaping without help. The infiltration operatives had risked everything to give the Aurora an opening. Gannon couldn't abandon them now. "Plot a course. We'll attempt to rendezvous," she said, ignoring the protests from the senior officers who feared a trap. "They're part of our own. If there's any chance to save them, we must try." Achingly, the Aurora crept toward the remote coordinates provided by the infiltration shuttles, an asteroid field on the edge of nowhere. Sensor sweeps revealed the drifting shuttles. The debris-laden region concealed them from the Blockade, but maneuvering inside posed serious hazards. One collision might tear open another hole in the Aurora's wounded hull. Nevertheless, with fine adjustments and patient thruster pulses, the ship approached the battered shuttles. The first infiltration shuttle was dark, no external lights. Life support readings showed a small cluster of survivors. A rescue team boarded in full EVA gear. Now and then, flickers of movement or a broken voice message guided them. It took 2 tense hours, but eventually they cut through a jammed hatch and found 5 crew. 2 were unconscious, starved of oxygen. Another had a broken leg. All of them were dehydrated, exhausted, but alive. They wept with relief as the Aurora's medics hustled them aboard. The second shuttle was in slightly better shape, but half its systems were crippled. 2 infiltration operatives and a pilot had survived. They managed to form a docking seal. Renewed hope flickered in the grim corners of the Aurora's corridors as the infiltration shuttle's crew stepped aboard. They wore battered suits, their eyes ringed with desperation. Yet they brought precious knowledge, partial codes, to scramble the Blockade's network if used at the right time. They had gleaned it from the Blockade's own transmissions in the chaos of the infiltration. Commander Gannon wasted no time. "We'll use those codes on the next approach. If we can blind them for even a short window, we might deliver the last of these supplies. Then we find a hidden route back to Earth." She paused, scanning the circle of determined faces around her in the briefing room. This blockade has caused too many losses, but if we can show that it can be broken, even once, it might inspire others to try. We have to finish what we started. Spirits lifted among the crew. Repairs might not restore the Aurora to full strength, but these infiltration codes could prove decisive. With the infiltration survivors coordinating from the Aurora's database, Gannon plotted a final run. 2 more colonies had signaled urgent requests. One was an agricultural station, the other a mining platform. Both were cut off from Earth for months. Time was running out there as well, and so, battered though they were, the Aurora set off once more. Swinging around an uncharted nebula, the ship navigated a labyrinth of potential ambush points. They discovered one blockade frigate on patrol, but the infiltration codes managed to scramble its sensors. The Aurora took advantage of the confusion and slipped by. Every corridor of space was riddled with watchful eyes, but the infiltration team's hacking suite, combined with stealthy operations, gave them a chance in each near encounter. It was no easy journey. Lucent Station, the agricultural outpost, was perched near a small, watery moon. The seeds and irrigation equipment the Aurora carried were absolutely critical. The blockade had all but guaranteed the station would lose the upcoming harvest, which would ripple into famine. Bursting into the station's orbit, the Aurora found itself in another sharp skirmish with an enemy patrol. But thanks to the infiltration codes, half the blockade's weapon locks malfunctioned at the crucial moment. The Aurora's gunners, outnumbered but determined, hammered the patrol ships, forcing them to withdraw. High above the moon, cargo pods streaked downward, delivering seeds and agricultural technology that could save thousands from starvation. Next came the mining platform, Bassam's Rock. The entire structure was reliant on a specialized fusion reactor that had nearly run out of high-grade coolant. Without it, the reactor was at risk of meltdown. Gannon guided the Aurora in carefully, mindful that the blockade might attempt to exploit the platform's vulnerability. As expected, an enemy corvette arrived, bristling with spiteful resolution. This time, Gannon used the infiltration codes to scramble the corvette's targeting arrays. The Aurora's cannons hammered with short, devastating bursts. Within minutes, the corvette was forced into a retreat, a twisted wreck of its former might. Meanwhile, a shuttle delivered coolant canisters to Bassam's Rock, ensuring the reactor would remain stable. At the end of the harrowing series of missions, the Aurora floated among the stars, hull battered and scorched. But they had done it. 4 colonies, Aria Prime, Ganissar's Peak, Lucent Station, and Bassam's Rock, had received critical supplies. Against all odds, the blockade had failed to contain them. Many blockade ships were damaged or tied up in confusion, ensuring no immediate pursuit. The infiltration team's codes had bought them a precious reprieve. Now, battered but victorious, the Aurora faced the final question: the journey home. The blockade still ringed Earth's outlying jump gates. They had proven unstoppable to most, but Gannon refused to let that final barrier trap them. Perhaps the infiltration codes could open a path, or perhaps they could replicate the initial plan. Decoys, illusions, a short cloak burst, and a swift dash. Despite the damage, Gannon believed the Aurora could do it. The thrumming sense of determination among the crew told her that they believed it too. The Aurora's flight deck was a flurry of repairs in preparation for the final run. The infiltration survivors aided with software calibrations, ensuring the codes would create maximum havoc. Gannon's officers swapped out damaged circuit boards, rigged up emergency plating to patch hull breaches, and recharged the single cloaking generator spool that still functioned. It wouldn't last long, maybe 30 seconds of invisibility, but sometimes 30 seconds was enough. Steeling themselves, the Aurora crew initiated the jump back toward Earth's gate. Almost immediately, they faced a cluster of blockade warships on the other side. The blockade had reassembled in formidable force, bristling with renewed vigilance. The infiltration codes only confused a portion of them, but that was enough to fracture the blockade's formation. Gannon seized the moment. "Full burn to the gate," she called. The Aurora soared forward, weaving between the blockade's lines. Beams of energy cut the darkness in wild arcs. Several hammered into the Aurora's weakened shields, threatening to tear them asunder. Then the cloak engaged, overlapping with the infiltration codes. For half a minute, the Aurora vanished from the blockade sensors. By the time the cloak stuttered out, the Aurora was already at the gate's threshold, initiating the jump sequence. 1 or 2 blockade ships tried to close in, but the confusion allowed them too little time. A thunderous quake rippled through the Aurora as the jump spool flared, aligning with Earth's inbound gate. Ganon's heart pounded. If the blockade had any last trick, it was now or never. But as the swirling energy engulfed the Aurora, no final shot landed. The battered vessel dissolved into the slipstream of space-time. Moments later, Earth's star lit the darkness, and they emerged in friendly territory. Cheers erupted across the bridge. Loud and heartfelt, officers cried tears of relief and pride. The infiltration survivors exchanged battered salutes, some collapsing to their knees with exhaustion. An overwhelming sense of triumph and gratitude draped the Aurora's corridors. They had done the impossible twice. They had broken the blockade to deliver hope and then returned home to tell the tale. Commander Ganon stood at the forward viewport, gazing upon Earth, the cradle of humanity, still free. Now they could share what they'd accomplished. Pass along the infiltration codes, the shield modifications, and the knowledge that the blockade was not invincible. Others could follow their path. She could already envision convoys of supply ships braving the jump, infiltration teams sneaking behind the blockade's lines. One success would breed another, and soon the blockade might crumble altogether. A hush settled on the bridge as Ganon turned to face her crew. Most were stained with soot, bruised, some bandaged, yet in their eyes she saw the spark of victory. "We overcame fear. We overcame the blockade," she said softly, her voice echoing with quiet Humanity stands together, no matter the distance between stars. We will not abandon our own. Her words hung in the air, a testament to hope. Across the battered hull of the Aurora, that truth was etched like scarring. Though they had suffered, they had prevailed in protecting far-flung human lives. The blockade might yet linger, but humanity had shown it could be breached. A new tide was turning among the stars, and it carried the promise that no barrier could forever hold back those who dared to fight for one another, those who had risked everything, those infiltration teams, the Aurora crew, the colonists who refused to surrender, had proven that even under the threat of annihilation, humanity would stand. And as the Aurora glided toward Earth's welcoming arms, the promise rang through every soul aboard. Where there was need, they would go, blockade or not. The seeds of unity were sown in distant soils, nurtured by the sweat and blood of brave hearts, and nothing could stop that bright, unstoppable passage to hope.